just give you a little bit of a forewarning here. There are going to be questions. I'm going to be asking some questions that we've already put together. But if you have a question that comes to mind that you would like to see asked, if you would just fill out that 3x5 card, and Donnie and Evelyn are going to be picking those up. So without further ado, let's move right into an invocation being offered by Mike Reed.
Yep.
Our eternal Heavenly Father, we are grateful to Thee for our many blessings. We recognize Thy hand in all things. We recognize Thy hand in the Constitution and those great chosen men who designed it. We're grateful for our heritage. We wish Thee to attend us this evening. We may consider our futures by obtaining information about those who will lead us. We ask Thee to bless those who will be speaking. We ask that our hearts will be touched by the Spirit and that we will know the truth of the things that will be talked about this evening. We say these things in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you, Mike. Please remain standing for the presentation of the colors by the color guard.
Burk. Go. Hit. Hey.
Will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Don Petrie. Kirsten Millsap will lead us in the Star Spangled Banner.
Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed, and the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the bare side, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets dragged the monsters stinging in air, gave proof through the night
Both colors. Reset. Mark. Order. Mark. Hit. Wait. Forward. Mark.
All right, well, we are very excited. Thank you so much for that, members of the Color Guard. Who here has served in the military or is currently serving in the military? Will you please stand so we can recognize you? Thank you for your service. We are going to be passing around an email list. This email list is to really be advised on some of the activities that we're involved with, not only in the state of Arizona, but even throughout the country, some of the things that we're doing. I think I mentioned this just a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's worth repeating. We're heading out to Columbia University here in just about a month and a half. You think we're going to have some fun out there? That's going to be a riot, so we're very excited about that. We're going to be spending Constitution Week in New York City, Times Square. We're going to spend about a half a day out at Columbia University. We're very excited for that. And so you'll be able to not only hear about some of those activities, but what we're doing here locally as well, because we'd love to have you involved. We're creating a family, if you will, and that's what's going to be required to really move this message. Let's go ahead and hear from one of the candidates for Arizona governor. Let me just see by raise of hand, who here is undecided when it comes to who it is that they're going to vote for Arizona governor? Who's undecided? Okay. About a third, maybe a quarter to a third. Well, we're going to hear from Frank Riggs tonight. Really, these people, they've been traveling so much, involved in so many of these debates, they really need no introduction. But Frank Riggs served in the United States Congress out of California, representing California. He's also was a former police officer. And with that, he wants to be Arizona's next governor. Please welcome to the stage, Frank Riggs.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to be with you. Nice to be back with what I think is becoming my home away from home, Burk Basic School, as I get ready to start the new school year tomorrow, I understand. And it's really always good to be with Shane, who I refer to as really Arizona's #1 freedom fighter. It's nice to let that freedom just wash over us, right? And I'm telling you this, I'm running for governor of Arizona because I intend, working with the state legislature, working with my partners and colleagues in state government, to make sure that we have a rebirth of freedom and opportunity in Arizona that makes our state a model for the rest of the country. Thank you. And as I think about it, you know, my life, my adult life, has really been dedicated to freedom, defending freedom, protecting freedom. I guess my selfish reason is for my children, and now my 3 grown adult children, all married, and now, as of 2 weeks ago, when we welcomed our 3rd grandchild into the world, my 3 grandchildren. But I have been about freedom and liberty. That's why, out of high school, I enlisted in the United States Army, and I'm proud of my military service. That's why, out of the Army, I became a police officer and the deputy sheriff. Went to college on the GI Bill, got my degree. Most importantly, met my wife to be in the back of the room. My wife of 34 years, Kathy, native daughter of Arizona, born in Tucson, Kath Way. And that 3rd grandchild that we had 2 weeks ago was a baby girl, Savannah Elizabeth Riggs, who now, like her paternal grandmother, is a native daughter of Arizona. And I defended freedom when I decided to run for the United States Congress in 1990 and was elected, defeating a Democrat incumbent in a congressional district where Democrats have almost a 20-point registration advantage. I went back to DC on the slogan that said, "A tough cop to Congress," organized the Gang of Seven to expose corruption in Congress, the House Bank and Post Office scandals, went on to serve 2 more terms as a United States Congressman, during which we cut federal government spending and taxes for the first time in our lifetime. When I left Congress after 3 terms to keep my term limits commitment, the federal budget was balanced and generated surpluses for 4 consecutive years thereafter. We have fundamentally reformed welfare by imposing time limits and work requirements on able-bodied welfare recipients. And I had compiled a consistently conservative voting record that earned me the highest ratings and endorsements of National Right to Life for my pro-life, pro-family voting record, and from the NRA for my voting record in defense of the Second Amendment and gun owners' rights. In my last term in the House, I chaired the House Education Subcommittee. Actually, Newt Gingrich, Speaker, came to me and said, "I want you to chair the House Education Subcommittee." And my first reaction was, "Why me? What have I done wrong?" But he said that because I had been a school board president, and that's how I cut my political teeth, he wanted me to oversee the process of trying to downsize and dismantle the U.S. Department of Education, which is blatantly unconstitutional. Now, we couldn't do that with Bill Clinton in the White House, and by the way, my last votes as a member of Congress were to impeach Clinton. But we were able to turn those federal education programs, not for a scandalous affair with a White House intern, but because he perjured himself in front of a grand jury. But we were able to convert those programs into block grants. And we made a lot of progress, which has since been essentially reversed as the federal government continues to expand its reach and its intrusion into the legitimate sovereign affairs of Arizona state government. They're doing this tweet the vote thing on, I think it's KTAR, it's the FM station. I got a tweet today about how do you improve, again, on basically the eve of the school year starting, how do you improve public education in Arizona in 144 characters? A little bit like the debates and forums we've had. Tell us your solutions for fixing the state budget, getting our economy growing again, securing our border, protecting public safety, which, by the way, is the first and highest responsibility of state government, and for improving K-12 education. So I simply tweeted back, Arizona standards plus local control plus parental school choice and parental rights equals accountability in K-12 education. Hashtag repeal Common Core. And you have my word on that. It's a solemn oath. It's a solemn oath. When I give my word, I consider it to be an oath. A vow, like the most important vow I've taken in my life, my marital vow to Kathy. But also those oaths that I talked about. When I enlisted in the United States Army, when I first pinned on the badge and became a police officer and took an oath to protect and serve the public, and yes, the oath of office when I was sworn into Congress to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So you have my oath that we will repeal Common Core to restore local control and decision-making in K-12 education and take back our legitimate responsibility as Arizonans for how we educate our kids. We'll get it done. And in this room on Saturday night, I think there was some of you here were in attendance, and there were some people that questioned, well, Frank, how can you do that as governor? And I said very simply, I read from that 2.5-page memorandum of agreement, which in that agreement says these standards are intended to be voluntary. That memorandum of agreement is signed by Governor Brewer, whose authority expires the day she leaves office and who cannot bind her successor. So I will rescind her signature on that Common Core memorandum of agreement. I'll work with the state legislature to defund Common Core and save the $350 million plus. I think Diane thinks it may have a better number than I do as to the actual cost, but to save Arizona taxpayers the full cost to fully implement Common Core in Arizona. And I will demand, and I will expect the resignation of the members of the Arizona State Board of Education who voted to adopt Common Core. And on that last point, On that last point, some of my opponents challenged me. Well, Frank, you can't do that. After all, the State Board of Education was created by our state constitution. The members are appointed and confirmed for full terms. Well, of course I can. Do you think I'm asking the people of Arizona for a mandate? Send me to the governor's office and we will pull Common Core out by its roots. But I just want you to think about this. We have to hear this particular argument. Do you think that an incoming governor who has promised the people of Arizona that he'll get rid of Arizona, get rid of Common Core, not our president, who's promised the people of Arizona that he'll get rid of Common Core, do you think that governor shouldn't be entitled to demand the resignation of the members of the Board of Education who are unelected people? Every incoming governor has the right to appoint his team to staff out or fill out his administration. So I expect all gubernatorial appointees, as honorable men and women, to submit their resignations, just as happens at the federal level when there's a transition or change between presidential administrations, and I'll decide which ones I would like to ask to stay on in state government and be a part of my team. But it won't be those members of the State Board of Education who voted to adopt Common Core. And you have my word on that. And because Common Core is the theme of the night and one of the dominant issues in this election, and I predict to you, by the way, those Common Core moms are going to be heard from in this election. Call them barbarians if you like, but they're going to be heard from in this election. That's right. They're a powerful force across this state and across this country. So I'm just going to conclude with this, and that is, folks, don't be misled and don't settle in this election. I'm running against vanity candidates, self-funding, millionaire vanity candidates who've never held elective office, who've never had to cast a single tough vote. I cast over 3,000 votes as a member of Congress. My very first votes were on the first Persian Gulf War resolutions. My last votes, as I mentioned a moment ago, were on the articles of impeachment against Bill Clinton. Don't settle for someone with no legislative record, a blank slate, no record to back their rhetoric. Because we can do better, and we need a proven, determined, tested, trusted, vetted governor in that office, given the stakes and given the challenges that we face. So I've been in 50 side-by-side forums and debates. I was in Lake Havasu earlier today, got asked the question, well, where do your opponents come down on Common Core? The most telling one of all, here we are, all the candidates assembled at a conference table upstairs in the Arizona Republic for an interview with the Arizona Republic editorial board and a lot of the news reporters. And now they claim, of course, it wasn't being recorded, even though every reporter had out their recorder or smartphone recording it. But we were all asked point blank, what is your position on Common Core? I'm the only candidate that said, I will get rid of Common Core to restore local control and decision-making in K-12 education, to protect the rights of parents, to protect charter school autonomy, to protect homeschooling. The other candidates, I guess, since they can't produce the tape recording, you'll have to take my word on this, but they all straddle and waffle on that question. Why? Because they're still courting the Chamber of Commerce vote. The Chamber of Commerce, that along with the Bill Gates of the world, have foisted Common Core upon us in complete disregard for state sovereignty, the 10th Amendment, and the legitimate responsibility of Arizona state government, since it takes up 40% of your state tax dollars, for K-12 education. The other candidates straddle and waffle at it. You look at their supporters, and you look at Mr. Ducey's supporters in particular, the business community is panicked because he's sinking. He was their hand-picked candidate. He's the establishment candidate. He'll do their bidding, Mr. Bidwell. And the fact of the matter is, they have all, at some point or another in the course of this campaign, have tried to straddle on that particular issue. And folks, when it comes to first principles, like protecting local control in K-12 education, like protecting the rights of parents, there can be no equivocation. So I'm just going to conclude by saying, I didn't look out in the audience when Shane asked for a show of hands, but those of you who are undecided, I hope you'll really, at this point, obviously since we're into early voting by mail ballot, the primary election's coming right up, I hope you'll carefully evaluate the candidates. Think about the candidate who's truly proven, who's ready to do the job on day one. I'm going to turn 64 in September. I'm blessed with good health. I'm in great shape. Maybe some of you see my TV commercial, because I work at it. But I'm not going back into politics because I want. I've been out of politics 16 years, joking all the while I was a recovering politician. And I'm only doing this because I think the stakes are so great. I think we are in crisis as a country. I'd love to get Shane's opinion on this, but I think the crisis is on a huge magnitude, on a par with basically going back to our founding as a country, when Dr. Franklin walked out of the Constitutional Convention and Mrs. Powell approached and said, well, doctor, what have we got? A monarchy or a republic? And he famously replied, a republic if we can keep it. That challenge as to whether we can keep our republic is greater today than at any time in our country's history since the Civil War, given a president and a lawless administration. And I'm going to push back hard on it. So I'll just close with this. I think it would be a good thing. I want to make our state, I will protect state rights, including beginning with K-12 education. I want to make our state less, not more dependent on the federal government, but it would be a good thing for Arizona's next governor to have successful experience as a United States congressman, as a reformer and leader in that body. Somebody who knows how to get things done back there, who does know how to push back against an intrusive, ever-expanding, overreaching federal government. And I will be that governor. We've got tough challenges, but I'm convinced that we can, as I said at the beginning, we can have a rebirth of freedom. We can restore confidence in our government, the idea of constitutionally limited government. We can restore hope and opportunity, especially with our young people, by making them see that their voices are heard, that elected officials are, in fact, responsive and accountable. So again, I hope you'll carefully study the candidates. I think I was supposed to make, very quickly, 2 announcements. One, I'm going to be right back in this room tomorrow with the Honorable Russell Pierce, former State Senator Pierce, author of SB 1070. Russell has endorsed my campaign, my candidacy, big supporter, and we're going to be talking about border issues and federal government overreach, and certainly Russell is an expert on that particular subject. And then there is going to be an event. Let's see, this is on August 16th. It is, I'm looking for the location here. It is the Moral Action Ministry meeting, Saturday, August 16th, 9:45 to 12 noon. It is at the North Scottsdale Christian Church, 28700 North Pima Road in Scottsdale. I'm sure there'll be more flyers around, and I'm going to be speaking at that event as well. I'm going to stay for the debate, which I'm sure will be lively. But I want you to know, in closing, that Diane Douglas has my strong support. The governor, to get rid of Common Core altogether, needs to have a partner in the state superintendent. And I look forward to working with Diane to get rid of Common Core, to restore local control and parental choice in K-12 education. So thank you for this opportunity to visit with you tonight. I appreciate it very much.
All right, thank you, Frank. We're ready for the debate. And I have to tell you, John Huppenthal, you don't have a tablecloth. And the reason why is because you are not a female. This was a last-minute request, and so I had to accommodate the request because your opponent is wearing a skirt. So it's only the right thing to do to accommodate that. We're very excited. We're very excited about having both of these individuals here tonight. They've both been on my radio program. We both had lively debates on that program, and I'm just thankful that they're willing to come out and have this conversation and really give us some direction about where they think we should go right now when we're talking about education. You know what, I have to say, when you look at the conservative movement and you look at the liberal movement, we have so many things wrong when it comes to moving this message. We so often focus on the next election, and the other side is focusing on the next generation. That's part of the problem in America right now, and that's why we need to have this debate tonight about where we're going with respect to our education with our young people, the opportunities that are there awaiting for us. And so with that, if I can just take a seat, I'm going to introduce the both of them. Diane Douglas, she sat on the governing board of the Peoria Unified School District from 2005 to 2012. She was the board president in the years of 2008 and 2009, and she wants to be your next superintendent of public instruction. Will you please welcome to the stage Diane Douglas. John Huppenthal, he's your current Arizona Superintendent of Public Instruction, and he's running for re-election. His political career includes serving as city councilman, state representative, and state senator, and he'd certainly like to remain your Superintendent of Public Instruction. Please welcome to the stage John Huppenthal. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the format of the debate. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. We're then going to move into 2 rounds of questions. The first round of questions will come from me. These are questions that we put together. And each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. And then after each candidate has had an opportunity to answer that question, there'll then be another 2 minutes for rebuttal. And that rebuttal, can include interruption, so long as it's done respectfully, and bantering, cross-examination, really a discussion between the two of you. And then the second round of questions will come from the audience. And again, if you have questions as we move through, please fill out your 3x5 card. And Donnie, where are you?
Right here.
The old grumpy cowboy. And then Evelyn as well. Evelyn, where are you? Evelyn, I think she's probably out before here, but she'll be involved in making that happen. So let's move forward with opening statements, and we'll begin with Diane Douglas.
Can everybody hear me? Yes. Shane, thank you for having me here tonight. I appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. I'm Diane Douglas, and as you heard, I'm running for Superintendent of Public Instruction. My husband, daughter, and I, we moved here from what I fondly refer to as the People's Republic of New Jersey to raise and educate our daughter here because we knew we'd have a better life. As she went through school, I began studying our American education system to make sure that she would get the best education she possibly could. And because some things kind of made me go, huh? They're doing what with our children? And I wanted to understand. As she went through school and when she ultimately graduated, I decided to run for our local school board, which was the Peoria Unified School System. You know, we have revamped and revised education multiple times in this nation, and we do it every 10 years or so. It's not going to change because the same people who have marginalized academic content, rewritten our history, or in many cases, quite frankly, just want to make a buck, are the same people who are doing it again and again and again. Our State Board of Education brought in the Common Core standards without telling us, without asking our permission, without finding out what we wanted for our children, because they're our children. We need to not believe these falsehoods that we're being told. Recently, the Chamber of Commerce released talking points for candidates so they would know how to deceive you because they think their vision for education is far more important than your vision for your children and your grandchildren's education. I'm Diane Douglas. I'm running for Superintendent of Public Instruction because I want to return control of education to Arizonans because parents know best what their children need. Thank you. God bless.
Mr. Huppenthal.
Well, first of all, Shane, thank you for setting up the debate tonight, and thank you for your dedication to the Constitution, which has spanned decades. You've done an incredible job across the entire state of telling all of our students what an incredible nation we live in, what an exceptional nation we live in. And I know that from my personal experience. I grew up on the south side of Tucson, 5 brothers and 5 sisters, and my strongest memory of childhood is hunger. Being hungry every single week. Shopping day was Wednesday and we started running out of food along about Sunday. So I know the value of a dollar. My family, my dad and I refurbished a $40 car. We drove that car. We drove that car for 6 years. We know that there's still families out there that are stretching to make ends meet. And every year of my elected service, we've known and acted that dollars are precious and they needed to be absolutely conserved. As a young child, my mother took us to the library every single week. Before kindergarten, I was reading books on Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, and I was learning the history and the culture of this country. My fondest memories were of reading about Lewis and Clark heading out west and struggling and dragging those horses and boats up to that first mountain peak and then looking out west and seeing 7 more mountain ranges. And it was that precise moment in reading that book that I understood what it was meant to be an American. They didn't head back to Missouri. They continued to head west, and they had to climb those 7 more ranges. That was an incredible feat. They accomplished the mission that President Jefferson had given them. And that's what these values are what I've enacted through my 20 years of elected service. I have an incredible record of accomplishment relative to decentralizing power, defeating the federal government. They're the best homeschool laws in the nation, according to our Homeschool Association, Arizona Families for Home Education. I was the deciding vote to bring charter schools to Arizona. And once I brought charter schools to Arizona, I took them from a 10-year contract to a 15-year contract. And then I said that they could replicate without going through all the bureaucracy. School choice is my venue. You know that I've bled for school choice. I've been battered politically to make school choice work. This is what I'm all about, decentralizing power and fighting the federal government. We'll talk more about this tonight. Thank you for being here and giving up your evening.
Diane, let's go first to you. What is the job of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, and why are you the best person for the job?
The job of the superintendent, and I wish I could tell everybody here that it comes with a magic wand to just make the federal government get out of our education system and return it to our children. But basically, oops, I'm on leash here. The job of the superintendent is number 1, to superintend the schools of Arizona and to make sure that the schools of Arizona are doing the jobs that you want for your children and your grandchildren. Now, how is that accomplished? It's accomplished in part through your locally elected school boards. And right now where we have a problem is with an appointed board rather than an elected board. You only have 1 elected voice on that board. And right now they are letting everybody imaginable get between your locally elected representatives, the people that come from your neighborhoods, to decide how your schools are run, and the State Board of Education. We have Expect More Arizona, we have First Things First, we have the Chamber of Commerce, we have all of these people who have special interests and special reasons, money, for wanting to get in this fray and getting to decide these things. We need a leader in our State Department of Ed that will get these people out of the way and stop giving unelected people so much power over your children. You know, we have a system right now where our education system isn't asking what we expect for our children and what we want for our children. They're telling us what we must accept from them for our children. And in my opinion, that's what the decision you're going to make in this election. Are you going to let bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., or bureaucrats on Jefferson Street decide what's best for your children? Or are we going to take back control of our education system for our children to make sure they're educated to be free-thinking, free-governing Americans? Thank you.
The job, unfortunately, of the superintendent right now has become defeating Obama's liberal education agenda. That's become job 1. And nobody's been more effective across the nation than I have. We've had students crossing the border, illegal immigrants crossing the border, attending schools at taxpayer expense. I had to do major enforcement actions to put a halt to that. We returned over $1 million to taxpayers when those students were attending those schools at taxpayer expense. We put an end to it. When I came into office, I had the ethnic studies controversy. And I had to make sure that I won that battle. And I spent 6 months getting ready for that war. We went through all the lesson plans and organized them to present the evidence exhibits. I selected the expert witnesses that would testify in the trial. I selected the lawyer who would conduct that battle. Stage by stage, I got ready. 6 months. A lot of people were criticizing me. They wanted fast action. Well, when we were ready, we went in and mopped the deck with them. I defeated them in state court. I defeated them in federal court on appeal because I did such a good job in state court. And we're continuing to defeat them in that fight down there. So the border enforcement, the ethnic studies, and then there was the waiver. The waiver is a tough thing. You're negotiating with the entire apparatus of the federal government. We ended up with one of the best, if not the best, waivers in the nation because of my knowledge of basic education research. We were able to keep them continuously on the defensive. We shoved back the entire Elementary and Secondary Education Act of the federal government and rid our schools of all that bureaucracy and paperwork. So we've done a great job of defeating the federal government and Obama's liberal education agenda. We're going to get in more to this Common Core controversy. Much more complex than some of the simplistic speeches you've been hearing out on the campaign trail. Just as I got ready to fight the battle on ethnic studies and win that, I am now ready to fight the Common Core battle and win that. I've seen the lay of the land, I've laid it out, I've created a strategy, we're ready to win again. And I will compare my win-loss records when it comes to conservative victories with any elected official over the last 30 years. I am almost undefeated. Thank you.
Ms. Douglas, any rebuttal or cross-examination?
Yes, exactly. Well, I would like to refute the ethnic studies was actually not program, that was brought, a suit that was brought and basically dropped in Mr. Huppenthal's lap by his predecessor. Laws were passed to make sure those ethnic studies were stopped, and it stopped, and I would question why, when the suit was already, and why we had an attorney general who could have fought that suit, why a new attorney was hired at taxpayer expense. But talking about, and I understand that Tucson is back at it, and they're back at bilingual education also, but when you talk about No Child Left Behind waivers, you have to realize in order to get those waivers, we had to agree to accept Common Core. We had to agree to turn over the standards and the education of our children to the bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. And as far as the waivers having much meaning, here is a letter that our Department of Education received, the Honorable John Huppenthal, on November 25th of 2013, that basically said, if we didn't have our, I believe it was our teacher evaluation in line, the way they wanted it, those waivers are gone. So that's how tenuous that the waivers are, and that's how strong a grasp Washington wants to keep on our children and our education system.
You're entitled to your opinions, but you're not entitled to your facts. The fact of the case is, when I was in the legislature, I was chairman of the Education Committee. And the ethnic studies law was put through my committee, I passed that through my committee, and it went into law. So I created the groundwork for that. And when I got into office, there was no case prepared. There was no evidentiary exhibits. There were no experts selected. We did all of that work, and it was meticulous, grinding work to get prepared for that battle. All of it. It was my team that prepared the exhibits, that organized the lesson plans, that selected the national experts that were going to come in to win that case. So the idea that that case was gift wrapped for me is a complete fabrication. We had to do our due diligence. And people who have been familiar with me over time know the incredible depth that I go into in doing research on education research, basic research to be ready for battle, any kind of battle when it comes to public policy. I did 212 pieces of legislation as a legislator. That's an incredible workhorse. Do you know who was #2 in Arizona history? 167. We cleaned out massive amounts of bureaucracy, massive amounts of regulation by working every single day, bringing experts together and saying, how can we make these laws better? That's my track record. Working, working, working. Not one press release in 18 years. Just work. Thank you.